can't thank you enough for being here, being everywhere. Yeah, and we believe that we will make a difference. So here comes the keynote conversation today with the topic making a difference. With our dear friends Eric and Viv, our great partners of this conference, co-hosts of this conference, to share in their different position: educators, project managers, trainer, activists, to interpret or to explore the topic of making differences in the society or a different context. So, Eric and Viv, shall we start?
Yeah, let's do
Yes,
it.
as we are waiting, we are about to put this chat online. One more reminder. So it's your choice to close or open your camera, and then welcome to use the chat room to communicate too. It's always open. Yes, please. So, hello, Eric. Viv, who start first? Maybe Eric.
Okay. Remind me when it's too long because I have prepared quite a lot.
Okay.
Because what I'm going to share is my recent studies on the Hong Kong's music against the paradigm shift of the political climate of the social movements. So it's pretty long, as you can imagine. So I try to run it fast. So can I share screen somehow?
I think you can, as the co-host.
Let me find it out because, oh yeah, there.
We'll give you 5 minutes, okay? We are good at interrupting, right?
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. So I'll be quick. Is this scene on the Music King versus paradigm shifts of Hong Kong social movements? Okay, so actually I started to find out more on this topic because in 2016 I came to Taiwan to start my studies on interdisciplinary arts. And it was the time when I realized that in Hong Kong movement, music was really antagonized. So people really hated it at the time. It was really hard to accept that because it's strange that the protesters are attacking fellow protesters if they do music. So I grew a big interest in understanding what it is. Because in this world, all these kind of social movements, protests, they are filled with music for different meanings, and they are all very powerful. So I was determined to discuss more the power of the music. So in Hong Kong, I can put them into different categories, how music was used. Actually, in the earliest time in Hong Kong, existing songs were appropriated and the community are just listeners or singers. So today I'm trying to share on the perspective of the community because I think that means more for participation if we talk about social movement. So they used to use existing songs, and then there would be singers or writers who write songs, but the community are just listeners or consumers. And then there would be artists composing for the community. So community would provide the content. For example, they talk with the artist, they share the stories, and the artist will write the songs and produce it. And then the more participation is artists just being a supporting role. So the community music is more about how the life of this community is, and the artist is the facilitator. And then to move forward, the community became the artists themselves. So they spontaneously, they create and they perform by themselves, especially with the help of the internet. And then towards last year, you know, it was a time when David just described, the social movement became more decentralized. There was a big urge to have decentralized way of organizing or doing anything. So even music was decentralized in the creation. And in the end, music in Hong Kong became kind of actions in the movement last year, which was the biggest in history in Hong Kong. So I will go through this one by one and hopefully I can be fast. So for appropriation of music, there used to be songs like this kind, but I don't know if you can hear the sound. Can you hear the sound? Can you not? Okay, so I will share again and I have to choose music. How do I do it? Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the this is for the 1989 after the Tiananmen massacre. So even for this ceremony of music awards was selected as one of the top 10 songs. There was the appropriation of a song that was actually for the army, for China when they were at the war. But because the lyrics was really strong and really about sacrifice, so the majority of the protesters in China and Hong Kong, they took this song and they made it into the theme song for commemorating that. I don't have much time, so I have to go after this. So this kind of songs actually are quite not the same meaning for the movement that they were hoping for. I mean, they are really different meaning, but there are some words within the lyrics that might feel like is supporting the movement and they take use of that. So it's the same thing for another pop song in Hong Kong, which is called the Boundless Sea, Vast Sky. So this is the major song in one of the important movement in Hong Kong during the 2010. This song actually, this singer is the main writer of the song. Actually, the song is about giving up and feeling happy. So when you sing this kind of song inside a movement, the meaning is actually quite contradicting. But because there is some line that says that I believe in freedom and I love, so if there is a path, there won't be alone, something like that. So these are the things that I think might not be it is some interesting phenomena because people may not really go into the background or the context of the music and then they took use of it, which is fine, but it's just a different way of doing music in the protest, which might mean that it's just that the sound of the music that can get people together instead of having a meaning in the music at that moment. I cannot go too deep into it, but as an example, this boundless ocean, vast skies actually became really stigmatized after the umbrella movement, because before that, it was the song of this local artist who passed away by an accident. So people really regarded it as a song of Hong Kong. But during the umbrella movement, because people split in the protest clan, so some people were for more pacific movement, some people are more for radical movement. So the radical side attacked people who sang this song as leftard, so leftist retard. So it became the identity of the people who are more pacifist. And then, so this song is stigmatized. So after the umbrella, no one dare to sing this kind of song anymore, this particular song. So this kind of appropriation is quite tricky, because the song itself may be, it can be interpreted in too many ways. Okay, so this is one way that was existing in Hong Kong for a long time. I think since the 1980s, since the Tenement until the umbrella movement, it was one of the ways, but I think after that it's gone. And the next is artists making songs for the movement. So there is people like Lenny on the band with the band of Blackbird, and Wong Hin Yan on the front of this row. These people write songs particularly for the movement. So it's kind of like the usual practice of many international movements, that artists write songs as a support of the movement, but it's mainly coming from the individuals. So these two artists, they wrote songs to support. So as community, for the participation, actually what we could enjoy is to listen, or maybe at most to sing along. So as community, the participation is still to consume in a good way. Okay. And another part is community making the music with the artists. So this is one thing that I really appreciate a lot. There is this big important activist in Hong Kong called Father Franco Mella, and he wrote hundreds of songs with communities when after he listened to their stories. Oh, that is this one.
Eric, be reminded that when you play the music, we can't hear you talk.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah, so just and the time.
Only the poor will live forever. The poor will live. If you watch people down the road, you can see me walking and panting. You can call me Lily. I was a dancer in the US. Father had left us a lot of money, but one brother to eat all. The poor said, even the house you live in now belongs to him. Oh my gosh, my joy, one two parrots in my arms, they flew away one day.
So unfortunately, this is not a complete recording of him in action, but the practice of his music making is that he is always listening to stories when he is working with these people. And whenever there is a story, he writes a song for them, so that when the story is told again, it's not just some words, it's not just a distant person, it's not just some distant issues that you may not connect. It's some simple words that can make a lot more power, so that the stories can go along with his music, either on the internet or whenever he sings, and it's something that can last forever. And coincidentally, me and my team also did something like this in the umbrella movement. It was a project, we named it 24 Hours in the Revolution. We actually named it after Pete's project called 24 Hours in a Tower, because we think the people who were in the umbrella movement, because it was an Occupy movement, so many people came out but actually they were not really knowing what to do at the beginning of the movement. So we felt it's a really big waste of energy because people are just trying to defend even when there is nothing happening. So it's really dragging. So we believe that it's important to take good use of the energy to be a creative project. So we a team of 10 to 15 people, we form a group to go to one position of the protest site to record the whole movement. I mean, not the whole movement, but to listen to stories of people passing by. For example, if it's a 24-hour, the people who appear there at 3 p.m. would be very different from the people appearing at 3 a.m. So we hope by this one day documentation, we can really record the smaller history of the big history that might not be seen anywhere else on the media because it's always usually about the big conflicts. So it's June where you see a while ago and us. So we did dance, we did music, we did poems, and we write stories. So we go to the protest site and then we talk to people. We invite people to come to talk to us. And after they talk to us, we will write a song and we upload the song on YouTube. In the end, we have recorded 40 songs. So these songs, they are all coming from different walks of life, frankly. So we are happy to have recorded these songs so that umbrella movement doesn't just mean the big conflict between the political tension or the police, the protesters. It's about little stories, why people have to come out or why were they there? You know, what is the actual life that is struggling that brought them to the site. So instead of just staying there 24 hours, we actually went there 10 times because some people talk a lot.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I said I will. So maybe can we pass the mic to Viv first and then do you have last word to say and then we'll pass the mic to Viv?
Okay, so I will finish in one minute. So these songs we made, they were all shared on Facebook and YouTube, and Pete was there. And we tried to bring the music outside the protest so that it will build a better listening and communication with the people outside the protest site, which is actually one of the most important needs of all social movements, because I think when you're on one side, it's always very difficult for you to be open again. But we want to make sure voices are not just stands, it's not just comments, it's also stories, it's also experience. So that's why we did those stuff. Okay.
Yeah. As a person personally experienced these years and Eric's work, I must say, yeah, this is as always impressive for us to learn the story again. So now for Viv, will be sharing with us her work. Viv.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm just gonna share a little bit about, I guess, what we do over here in Sydney and why. I've got a slideshow of just images so that you're not just listening to me talk. So give me a second and I will get that up.
Remember to share the voice if you need to.
No, there's no audio. It's literally just so you don't have to listen to my voice alone.
Correct.
So my name is Vivian and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. A lot of my work is in Western Sydney. And I've been working in the music industry for about 18 years. And a lot of the work that I do and the artists that I work with are all socially conscious and activist artists who have something to say. You met one of them, Dobby, who spoke in the last session last week and also in CMA. And essentially a lot of the work that we look at is a lot of the global issues that are impacting locally, from the things that happened in Lebanon with the revolution was a massive impact, because where we're based, we have a large Arab population. Similarly, when the terrorist attacks happened in New Zealand, it really impacted our local community. And so we look at all the strings of what's happening around the world and how that kind of impacts with us, because our community is like really diverse, and the diaspora that we have gets highly impacted by what's happening, despite the fact that we are so far away over in Australia. One of the main ways that we work is trying to infuse, I guess, the industry side of what we do, as well as community and education. And we really work from the ground up in trying to empower and amplify voices, because it's all about, I guess, giving control back to the person to be able to control their own narrative. And locally, I guess, when you're talking about Aboriginal and First Nations community and history, and the fact that we are still on stolen land, and the healing that still needs to be done from that. We've recently, obviously through Dobby and also another artist, Barker, who's starting to come up on the scene, we're starting to see that music, especially hip hop in particular, is really being used at the forefront of discussion, both from a local level all the way through into politics, and taking at the forefront of all the protesting and things that happened. And I guess one example of this, or a couple of examples, is, with Dobby's I Can't Breathe, in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. And recently there was a protest that was supposed to happen around the deaths in custody issue, and the police stopped it. They went to court and forced the protest to not happen. So essentially what we did as a festival, so I had the 40 Sydney, which is a hip hop festival, which usually runs in Western Sydney, is due to the lack of opportunity for people to speak, we ended up creating a panel as part of the festival to enable that conversation to continue, even though the police tried to shut it down in its physical form. So I guess from our side, it's really, we're kind of in a position at the moment where things are getting so bad that we have no choice but to speak up. And there's this really exciting movement that's happening on the ground, particularly in Western Sydney, where it's not one or two artists who are kind of moving and shaking things around, but it's 20 or 30, who are continually kind of moving, and it's creating this energy and excitement, in the region, which is, it's great to finally see, the fact that it's not one voice anymore that can't be kind of held and driven. The other thing, so in terms of the community that we work with, so basically, like I said, it's very diverse, and we really focus on communities, in areas that are kind of disadvantaged or don't have access to things. We've also been having conversations with people like Graham, who's also on this call, around kind of creating and utilizing hip hop and other mechanisms of music to really integrate and engage throughout regional New South Wales, and creating that relationship with Western Sydney and the metro areas to help kind of diversify spaces and opportunities. So some of the images that'll flash through. So like I said, I've been based in Australia, but some of these images that you're just seeing now are from an Arab cultural festival that is based in London, that runs once every 2 years, called Shabek. And I've been lucky enough to work on the 2017 and the 2019 edition. And that was the first time. So my background is Lebanese Australian, and that project was the first time that I ever engaged with artists from within the region. And that really was a massive eye opener for me, because it essentially, I guess, reminded me what my purpose as a producer is, because being able to speak and finding out, how realistically, even though we're a minority in our country, we're really lucky and fortunate to be where we are. Because other people, if they were outspoken and said what they wanted to say, or produced what they wanted to produce, they could essentially be killed, imprisoned, or exiled from their country. And it really made me realize the importance, especially as a producer, someone who designs platforms, my role in amplifying voices and creating space, honest and open spaces that were not being censored to enable, especially young people and community, to be able to say what they want to say without having that restriction. But yeah, so that's, yeah, like I said, a lot of the artists. So Dobby is one. Barker is another artist. So Luca Lesson is another spoken word hip hop artist that we've been working with, and essentially we work with from touring all the way down to first timers or community engagement programs, like the festival that you're seeing now, kind of going through the screen. And the festival itself, it's enabled us to work with about over 800 artists. I think we've had in total, it's probably been about 200 speakers, and about 80 to 100 young people who've gone through the workshop program in the last 5 years.
I have a very interesting observation that both of you, are working on projects that apply or you work in with the public spaces. But the context and the picture you draw is definitely different. So do you have any more things to say about, or maybe each other's space and context that you use the space for? Within the movement, you create art, Eric, and you use and Viv, you use the space as usual, like organizing programs, we plan for the space. But for Eric, I assume a lot of things happens like improvisation, right? So what's the change? What is the change happening in these different use of space, do you think?
I think it's kind of a mix. I mean, at the moment with COVID, there is no planning really. I don't know about how it's going on, what Eric thinks, but I know from our side, things are just happening constantly and instantly. And that example with I Can't Breathe in terms of Dobby's track that came out, that was a literal reaction to a journalist from Australia who was in the United States talking to protesters saying that Australians didn't understand or have the understanding of police killings. And it irked him that as a Black person, as a First Nations person in Australia, who sees it daily since the day he was born, he could not do anything but respond. And he did that through creating the rap track and through creating I Can't Breathe. And from the process of it being written, recorded, produced, and out in public, it was 1 week. Yeah. And that was to align with the protests that was supposed to happen that got cancelled, that we then as a festival ended up taking on and letting the organisers lead the discussion in terms of what they wanted to have kind of brought through to the front and center of what needed to be discussed.
Yeah, actually, I agree that with COVID, it's actually very hard now to make big plans of having people to come together, because that is the risk of, and that is the risk that people make use of, for governments. Because actually for Hong Kong last year, because it was a constant struggle between the government and protesters, how do you find new space to do stuff? And of course, it's always improvisation, because you look for those new places to make a change. So I think Hong Kong protesters, although it was, everyone has done a lot, and I think we have achieved a lot. But now we are still sacrificing a lot. So it was a very challenging time by the end of 2019, because a lot of people who try to look for spaces to do stuff were captured. And with COVID, even if you have the will to do stuff, you can't. So I think if you ask me what has changed, as I've seen in the chat box, what has changed after the national security law, or what has changed after the 2019, I think what we are doing right now is what we could do, to really have the things sink in, to really look for the untouched area that we can still exchange our ideas. I think actually because being always on Zoom is new to most of us, and now we are mostly always on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, online conferencing. So I think it's the time that we will somehow find out how to do the work of before with the same spirit, but in a new way. Because actually, like there is a song called "The Glory to Hong Kong," created last year by a decentralized process on a forum in Hong Kong, and it became almost like the anthem of the whole protest movement. It's really huge, and people in different places, all over the world, who are concerned with Hong Kong could sing that kind of song. So this is a very new way of doing kind of community music, because it's a participatory, collaborative, collective creation of a song that can be shared by many, many people. So that was, I think, it really mind-blowing for myself. In the beginning, I was not yet sure what this is, because it's like a national anthem, which can be really tricky. But in the end, people connect to it because of the emotion of the power, and it became one of the actions. So to sing that song in a public space or even in a shopping mall became an action instead of just a piece of music. So that is something really different. So I think now it's time to collect all this energy and ideas, and then when the COVID, if it would go away somehow, then it's the time to explore all this creativity.
Yeah, the thing is, this is another point to mention, because there has been such a shift to everything moving online. I know from my side and a few others have noticed the level of censorship that's come through from media and the control of what we're getting access to seeing. Because I remember when the explosion recently happened in Lebanon, there was 2 fires that happened straight after that I didn't see anywhere, and it was only because of specific people or specific artists who were on the ground, their voice, their stories, their music, that you are starting to hear, what's really happening in the region, or wherever you are placed in the world right now more than ever. The importance and the power, I guess, of artists, community, and music makers is to really push through what's real, because there is these blocks that are happening.
That's that's a very important issue to explore. And also, I have another questions before maybe we let the house also raise some questions. Viv and Eric, we are all project managers, that we always present our outcome, output, impacts of our projects when we are like formally write a proposal and conduct projects. But now, in social context with movements, changes we're making in the very front line with activists, or we believe that everyone are activists. Does this form of evaluation of output, outcome, impact, it works in such a context, and how do we say we have made a difference quantitatively, qualitative? We won't send them questionnaires. Do you feel this social movement changing? Right, we won't.
I don't know. But I think it's hard with social movement. The only way you can really assess is by conversation. I think you can't really. It's not really easy to do that in a quantitative kind of way. I think it's around the discussions and the interviews. And I know from a few of the events and programs that we've done, it's been through the interviews and the Vox Pops that we've, and it's a big part of the impact that we're seeing from these social movements and from the being very artist driven, is that idea of being visible, that younger people or someone who looks like me is up there right now saying and doing something. And that is where that inspiration comes from, and that hope, because when the younger generation are inspired, you know, nothing can get in their way. And it's absolutely incredible to see the impact of what is happening. And, you know, like I said, that's all about kind of taking control of your own narrative and giving the power back to the people. And it's really exciting to see that. And I think one of the positives with the digital kind of space is that it's enabling people to do that. And I guess like in your response around from a reporting standpoint and having to show that back, it's for us, it's been very much visual content. And I guess another way to show that, or one way that we have shown us, particularly with the festival. So 4E was supposed to run in March, April, and we had to cancel and 1 week out due to COVID. And so we decided to go online, and we pushed the conference online as well. So those discussions were really kind of heavy and potent topics. And it probably made up about 35 to 40% of our content over a 5-month period, but it held over 50% of our audience. So that tells whether it's funding, whether it's we're reporting back to whoever, that tells people that people want to listen and they want to hear what people want to say. Or, you know, these topics and these issues, from deaths in custody to censorship to tokenism and tick boxing around kind of the whole diversity issue, and a lot of issues, and kind of from mental health and, you know, music education, it's important and that people want to hear it and know it. So that's another way that we've done it, by kind of comparing the statistics and the engagement levels.
Yeah, because I really appreciate what Viv could do with all this stuff, because with careful observation and continuous communication with the people that you're connected with, it's really good that you can be more and more sure that what you have done and what you're doing is really making a change to these people. And for our context in Hong Kong, it's really hard, because after 2019, no one even showed up. I mean, no one even showed their faces in the protest, because you don't even want to know who they are. Somehow you will give in their identity if you know them. So it's better that everyone is anonymous, even if it's your friend in front of you. So that is a challenge. But I think to talk about evaluation of arts or music in protest or social movement is that you need to look at the really big scope of history until you can really say, you know, what that has done to the city or to the movement. So that's why I started with my presentation, that I'm now doing the research of looking into the music that was from 1997 until last year, so that I can look back and see how this political change for years may compare to how the music practices in the movement, you know, to see if they are actually following each other, or are they independently done. But from my observation, they are actually responding to each other, which is a good sign. So that musicians are always up to the front line of how this society is moving. So this is one thing. And the other thing is, you know, as musician or artist myself, I think the aesthetic of the work is to change or to move people's sensibles, you know, how you feel, how you were made to feel, so that you know you feel in a certain way for a particular event, not because you really want to feel it like that. It's the politics, it's the social organization, it's the education, it's the media who make you to feel in such way, so that sometimes you feel hopeless. Sometimes you feel that these are your enemies. Sometimes you feel that let's just migrate to another country. But these are not exactly what you want in the beginning. So you feel, you breathe with the community, and then you know what is the best to do. I think that can only be vague like this, because as artists, I think the point is you have more, you are trained to sense things really early, so that you can create something that can draw the attention of emotions to something more positive. That's what I think. So I cannot really evaluate it, but I can try to evaluate before I do it at that moment.
I also enjoy the idea we become part of the impact, that, you know, sometimes the word project managers hypnotize us, make us feel that we have right to speak than others, but no, it's not the truth. And yeah, sometimes we just get the position to say something to evaluate, but actually not the power. The power is from all of us, the people. So as I can see, there are so many fruitful discussions and questions in the chat session. I'm sorry I can't elaborate those, but we can also always see it. We'll record it. We'll see what we can do afterwards. And before we'll start the next session, the breakout rooms, the 3 parallel sessions. Do you have any last words? Pete, do you have anything to jump in?
Yeah, maybe before Viv and Eric just sort of finishes off, it's just fascinating when we proposed making a difference as our topic for this week. I hadn't realized that we were going to move into this whole political social change area, but it's just fantastic that that is what's happening at the moment, and so important in this current situation that we are talking about the politics and how community musicians and community artists can get involved in this whole world of social change. You know, we talk a lot about personal change and about the community music having deep transformational change on individuals and small communities, but the reality of, you know, needing to change, to work on changing society is actually, that's, you know, that's the end result. And I just, before finishing this, I mean, this conference sits in the context of a whole lot of new international collaboration in terms of community music. We had the community music activity sessions, the gatherings over the summer for the ISME conference. And I'm just going to put in the chat a link to the YouTube channel, which has got something like 80 videos and films of presentations and workshops. And there's another one that's just happened last week with some colleagues from Canada and England and Germany. So, you know, and all of this is showing how we make a difference in the work that we do. And I think it's a brilliant, brilliant thing. I'm so fantastic to see 50 people here who all have this belief that we want to make a difference. So that's really what I just wanted to share before these two sort of finish our first hour. Thank you.
Any last word by Viv and Eric? Very last word. I hate to keep time, you know.
Yeah, I think just kind of wrapping it up, just in terms of, I guess, when we're looking at music and artists and everything kind of holistically from this mindset, you know, I know from my side, I'm tired. I know a lot of the artists are tired, especially when the issues and things that people have been fighting for years. But I guess that constant fight, motivation, and the thought of never giving up is there because we have each other, because there is such a strong network. And that is why, like I said, we mentioned, like it's from a grassroots level and it's from the ground up, and why there's so much energy and focus being put into young people and into the local community, because that is where that energy and I guess that reminder of why we exist and why we do what we do to kind of keep going, you know, and continue. And it is hard sometimes, like Eric mentioned, it takes time to see the impact on a bigger scale. You know, it's going to be 50 years or 20 years from now where we can look back and see if anything that we did now made any kind of impact or difference, you know, in terms of the movement of our history. But it's about changing one person at a time and influencing and, you know, inspiring. You know, that's what we can do as an individual. And that's kind of, I guess, where our work lies, is doing it one person at a time.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think we are not just doing, you know, big music production and send out and think we are making a difference. In the old times, maybe people did that because that was the only way they can really spread their messages. But now when we have new methodologies and we have new technologies, we really try to touch each person so that we can make a change. And my last word is I need 3 hours if I want to complete my presentation.
No, you need more.
And I can play every song you want. And I think actually, if this conference was not postponed like before, like in the it was scheduled last year in March in the beginning, right? So if it happened at that time, my presentation would be totally different. It was still the time that people hated music in social movement. So
for your information, it's even 1 year more before.
So it's time.
Yeah. Right.
So this means the hope comes in at a time you don't realize, as long as we are still trying to do stuff. Because I heard from another conference, this chairman told us that when it was in the 1918, when there was the plague in Spain, after that there was a roaring 20s. When it was the Black Death, after the Black Death, there was the Renaissance. Yeah. And so now after this COVID, we can really expect there will be a huge explosion of creativity and positive energy in culture. It's just that we need to live long enough to see it happen. So let's live long, be healthy, and stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe, very important for us. So in a time of change, we go for changes during changes on ourselves. So what is the change we want to see? That's the song we listen from from Peter. And so the bad guy, me, is now going to facilitate you to join different breakout rooms. Final time. Thank you, Eric, Viv, especially Anthony, Viv, for this conversation. I really believe that all of us should keep in touch right after this